Until I need to talk.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Media Studies webinar. I'm Dr. Anne O'Brien, and I'm the head of the Media Studies department. And this is Lucas Genio, who is one of our second year students about to head into third year. So he's here to give you the on-the-ground perspective of the media studies and the media and cultural studies subjects. So what we might do is I'll talk to you a little bit about the media studies degree. We'll talk about what is media studies at Maynooth, what's different, unique about it, what's in each year of the degree. So we'll take a look across each of the 3 years and we'll see what the content is there. And then I'll explain to you what the media and cultural studies subject is. It's part of the arts degree rather than the media studies degree. And then we'll talk a little bit about what our graduates do when they finish their studies at Maynooth. And then I'll hand over to Lucas, who, like I said, will talk you through any kind of points of interest that you have about the degree or about student life at Maynooth. He's kind of well placed to answer that. So what is media studies at Maynooth? I suppose there's two main strands to the degree. On the one hand, we really try to get students to think critically about the media. And we do that in lots of different ways. So we look at representations in media texts. So, you know, what might be Irish about Irish cinema? How is something like that represented? Or how do women appear or disappear on our radio airwaves, for instance? So lots and lots of discussions about who and what and how things get represented across lots of different media texts, everything from print to radio to broadcast to film to online to streaming services across lots of different genres. So understanding representation and media texts and what they do and how they work is a big part of what students learn about. You also learn about the idea of the media audience, which of course is changing an awful lot, and no generation knows that better than the one coming into us at the minute. You've lived through a huge shift in terms of how people experience media or how they receive it. Traditionally, the media audiences didn't have an awful lot of capacity to talk back to the media, whereas now with online and interactive media and with social media, media product is consumed in a very different way, and we are all producers as well as consumers. So we look at how that boundary has blurred over the last couple of decades and what it means now to be in a media audience. We also look at media industries. So who makes our media? Who are these people? How do their working worlds operate? What kind of work do they do? And who's both included and excluded from that? In the department, we have a particular interest in kind of anti-racism, gender equality, diversity and inclusion, fairly broadly understood in the media. And so we will cover quite a bit of ground in that way. So we do a lot of thinking about media representations, media audiences, media industries. At the same time then, when students are doing the media studies program, they also get practical hands-on experience, which centers around this idea of creative digital storytelling. So we are teaching you lots of different ways in which you can tell lots of different kinds of stories across digital platforms. So you get experience in documentary production, you learn about screen design, what looks well in terms of layout, photography, that level of design. You learn about multi-camera production. So when you're directing and you've 3 cameras on action, what is the logic and practice of producing and directing for a multi-camera show? We teach you about interactive storytelling online. How can you express a message and idea in an interactive way that works for an online audience, that gives them lots of opportunities and possibilities around where your story goes, but keeps your audience with you. And then we also do short film, where you learn to kind of project, you write, direct, and shoot your own short film as part of the course. So we don't assume students have a huge amount of prior knowledge. We know you're all very kind of phone happy and well used to things like TikTok and online platforms where you're thinking a lot of the time in kind of really filmmaking grammar, but we take everything from scratch. And we use some industry standard equipment in our studios and on our location shoots as well. So you'll get to work with a different type of equipment. So those would be the 2 main strands of the degree at Maynooth. So in the critical thinking in first year, students they do 2 core modules that are kind of introduction to media studies 1 and 2. And in that module, we explore questions like, what is the media? How do we communicate? How do you engage with media? So we do a kind of an in-class survey with the 100 or so plus students who would be in the class around what media are you using at the minute? And the interesting thing about that is it changes every year. You know, Facebook used to be a big thing. It no longer is. People are using TikTok or all kinds of other platforms. So we look at kind of that ever-changing landscape. We think a little bit about what it means to research the media. So how do we think critically and how do we think as academics about what the media is and what it does? How do we tell media stories? We look at things like narrative and genre and platforms and how the medium shapes the message. If you're setting out to make a short film, you're doing something that's fundamentally different to writing a print piece or recording a podcast. The story and how the story gets told will shift across those different forms and formats. We look at things like, how does the media represent reality? How do they represent the world to ourselves? What's happening in this combination of old and new media? How do those boundaries blur? What's surviving from old media? What's kind of, old wine in new bottles? And we look then also at how specific different media work. So those are the kinds of questions that we look at in the first year module. Then one of the other creative modules that you'll do in first year is screen design. And in that module, you'll work with Mac computers in our Mac lab to learn the kind of visual, the textual, and the technical tools and methods that help you to think about how best to portray a static image or an animated image for different types of screens. So you learn about the first kind of foundations of screen production, thinking in terms of graphics and production. And you learn both the software, the tools, and the thinking that you need to be able to do that. In the other creative module in first year, you get to explore documentary production. So students get to work in small groups to come up with an idea for a documentary that they'd like to make. Obviously last year, we managed to get most of our students out to film during COVID, with using all the restrictions and taking all the precautions we needed to. But we were lucky that we were able to time their shoots so that they got to film. And obviously we had a lot of documentaries about students' experiences of COVID. But the content of what you get to make is entirely up to the students. So you get to explore your own creative interests. And we've had a really broad array of documentaries across all kinds of different topics. In that module, students get hands-on experiences with kind of how to come up with an idea for a documentary, how to go about finding people to contribute to it, how to think through things like locations for filming, how to think through, how do I make this look interesting visually? What can I film? How will I frame my shots? How will the shots cut together into sequences that make the program stimulating and interesting? And so you learn all of those kind of creative skills and then also practical kind of hands-on skills with doing cameras, lights, and sound workshops that teach you how to shoot on location, and then also a series of editing workshops that teach you what to do with the footage when you bring it back, how to cut it together, again, both at that practical level, but also at a creative level, how to think creatively about how different shots might cut together. So that's all in first year. So you get a really solid core foundation, 2 theory modules, and then 2 creative modules that give you a broad introduction into the kind of foundations of critical thinking and the foundations of creative practice. In second year then, those strands continue in the media studies degree. In second year, we have 2 core modules next year that will be Media Theory 1 and Media Theory 2, where you learn about key thinkers and key ideas in media. And then once you've done those core modules, you can do what are called electives, which are modules that you elect to do, you choose to do it. So you might want to do something like media and gender, or you might be interested in reality TV, or media and politics might be your thing, or coding or advertising. So you can choose which of those options you want to do. And again, you're guided through that process by the university and by its registration process, which allows you to pick what you're going to do. So again, you're doing more of the critical thinking and critical theory around representation, around audiences, and around the media industries. And on the creative side then, in second year, there's options on script writing, on interactive storytelling and on multi-camera production. So students will go into the TV studio where they'll learn to kind of floor manage, to use studio cameras, to set up for sound. You get a chance to present, if that's your thing, or to direct or to produce a studio type drama and a studio type magazine style kind of program. And Lucas might tell us a bit more about the interactive web authoring module. That's in second year as well, where you get to do kind of an interactive format of storytelling for, again, working with software on the Mac in our Mac labs. Third year then, you'll begin to see a common pattern emerging here where students have possibilities around the critical theory that they're going to do. And again, there'll be a core module in third year where we start to look at the world of work and we talk students through how to prepare for applying for media jobs, what jobs are out there, how do the media industries work, and what might be some of the challenges of getting into media work, and how as well some of the media industries need to be challenged to become more diverse and to become more inclusive. Those are the kinds of things that interest us in third year. So this year's third years just finished their module where we had a lot of guest speakers in from industry. So they got to meet documentary producers from RTE, some of their news journalists, sports journalists, people who are working with Instagram as social influencers, people working in PR, a really broad range of guest speakers coming into that third year module to start to give students ideas about what they might like to do next as they finish up their degree. And then a very practical kind of hands-on approach in that module where we get students to create their own kind of personal website where they can load their CV, load some of their production work, load some of their blogs. We ask them to write blogs as part of their assessments about somebody in the media industries that they have interviewed, and then also a profile of, an aspect of media work that they're interested in. So those will be the third year modules. They bring you closer to that world of media industries and media work. And then you can also choose some other things that you might be interested in, like podcasting. We have a live radio module. We have modules on fans and fandom. We have cinema modules, film modules, politics modules. So whatever it is that you're particularly interested in by third year, you can get to pursue that. And then on the creative side, students tend to specialize in third year and they either decide to do kind of an academic capstone thesis, essentially. So they'll do a big academic research project if that's where their interests lie. But if their interests are more on the creative or production side of things, they might decide that they want to do one of two things, either focus in on the interactive and the online world and do a project there, or they might decide that they're going to work on a short film, in which case they'll be guided through the whole process of coming up with an idea for a short film, about 10 to 12 minutes duration, writing the script for the film, figuring out how to cast it, doing all the location scouting, putting all the kind of health and safety procedures in place for the shoot. They get refreshers in the cameras, lights and sound that you've learned in previous years, and the editing workshops again. And you're guided through the whole kind of production management process for the short film. And some of the work that students have done on those short films is just really quite outstanding. When you think of, they really don't have budgets for the film, so it's all done on what's available to them. But some of them are just brilliant, and I always really enjoy seeing them at the end of every third year in their showcase. So that gives you a feel for what's in the degree. So obviously, that's the media studies degree, the BA Media Studies that I've been describing to you there. So that's coded MH109, BA Media Studies. It's a 3-year degree, but you can do it as part of an international degree as well. So for instance, if you decide to do media with Spanish, so in the BA Media Studies, you always take media studies with another subject. And that's actually a really good thing for a few reasons. Usually when people are going on to work in media industries, employers really like it if you have another specialism. So like RT would be really interested if you also have an economics degree, for instance. They like people to have other kind of areas of interest and other specialisms that they can focus on. So it's good to keep your interest fairly broad in your arts degree. And we've just found over the years, if you have media studies with Irish, that opens up all sorts of possibilities for working around Teach Cahir or any of the Irish language production that goes on in the country as well. So there's lots of possibilities around how you might want to combine media studies with other subjects. And there is a talk, there's a webinar at 2 o'clock about the arts degree, if you want to hear a little bit more about that more broadly. So you might do media studies with sociology, and that gives you great insights into kind of social inequalities, social structures, institutions, how they work. And that gives you kind of material and content that you can use in your media studies work. So it's a strength of our program that you have other possibilities to do alongside your media degree. So you always do it with another subject. There's an emphasis on both the critical thinking. You know, you'll get very good at thinking about media, thinking critically about it, figuring out what's going on and why, and coming up with really solid kind of research-based approaches to how you think about media. And then at the same time, there's the emphasis on creative work as well, so that you get to do project-based work, you get to work in documentary and short film and online design. And those are all great in terms of the actual skills that you have coming out of it. But that's really only one part of what you get out of that creative practice work. The other thing that you get are an awful lot of what we call transferable skills. So skills that employers are really interested in, like you'll have a strong record of working with other people, doing group work, doing teamwork, learning how to negotiate, you know, what happens if our group runs into a problem? What happens if I think my idea is better than your idea, but you're not listening to me? Then what do we do? And how do we get this project moved on? All very normal things that come up all the time in every workplace. But you'll have experience from your degree program of having worked through those experiences and being guided through them and figuring them out. So we find that by the time our students go from first to third year, once they hit third year, they become very adept at dealing with group situations, negotiating workloads, figuring out who's doing what, becoming really efficient and really effective in how they come at their projects and producing them to a really high standard. So those are the kinds of skills that you get from doing that creative practice work. The other option then in the program is to do the Media and Cultural Studies degree, and that's coded in H101. So this might be attractive for people who don't really want to do that hands-on practice type work, but they still find media really interesting. So this is part of the arts degree. So you do it with another arts subject for the 3 years of your BA. And again, you have that possibility of doing a fourth year international. So usually what happens there is students do first year and second year, and then they go away for their third year. And we've had students go to Slovenia, the States, Finland, France, Spain, Germany, lots of possibilities because Maynooth is partnered with a lot of different universities. So you might want to do an international degree, and then they come back to us and they finish off their last year. And the Media and Cultural Studies subject within the arts degree can be combined with lots of other arts subjects. And as I said, that talk on the arts degree at 2 o'clock will outline for you what subjects go with what. What the students on this do is they're with the media studies subjects for all of the core critical theory modules. So you'll be in our core first year media, introduction to media 1 and 2. You're in the core second year modules, media theory 1 and 2, and you'll be in those core theory modules in third year, which are media work and media industries. So you'll be in the same group for those theory modules, and then you can also choose from all the other elective options. So you might want to do a module on podcasting or advertising or gender or reality TV, where it's not so much hands-on work, it's more a classic sort of academic approach to thinking critically about media. So that might be an option for people who are interested in that possibility. So those are the two ways into media studies at Maynooth. In terms then of what do our graduates do when they finish their studies? As I've said, our graduates have really key skills in critical thinking, which means, you know, it's the real strength of an arts degree is that you're very accustomed to taking in lots and lots of different sources of information, figuring out which information is valid or what the problems are maybe in terms of some of the information you've gotten in. You know how to think through all that information and how to structure a response to it. So you've gotten very, very adept at thinking critically in being able to take in information, process it, figure out the strengths and weaknesses of it, and give a fairly succinct report back as to what all this information means. That's kind of what you're doing when you're writing an essay. And our students write lots and lots of essays. And we do a lot of work with them on essay writing and on how to structure an argument, how to make an argument about something. So again, that's a very kind of transferable skill when it comes to employers, because essentially that's what a lot of employers require. They require you to be able to come in, think through things, respond, and engage critically with them. Our graduates then also have really good skills in terms of creative thinking, you know, not just coming up with ideas for content, but the right idea for the right kind of content, and understanding the difference between a story that would work really well on radio. Like there's a really brilliant radio play, which is about when the lights go out down in a coal mine. So it's theatre of the dark. That couldn't work on film or television, because literally you won't be able to see anything. But it works brilliantly on radio, because, you know, the lights have gone out down in this coal mine, these people are trapped. What happens? You can hear them. So the pictures are better on radio. So you learn that kind of skill to be able to figure out, okay, is this a radio project? Would this work better for television? Is this a short film, or should this be an online project? And you get very good at thinking through all those possibilities and figuring out what you enjoy as well in terms of media. I always wanted to be a radio producer, but I ended up working in television. You know, that's how these things happen sometimes, and then really enjoyed that for a period. So you get to explore lots of different possibilities as to what you like, what you might want to pursue, where your talents lie. You know, you might think you really want to be a film director, and you might just find you're not that very good at telling people what to do, and that can be tricky. So, you know, you get to explore all of this over the course of 3 or 4 years. And then also with the digital storytelling, you get to explore kind of how technical you want to get with things. You get to explore some new technologies around VR and AR and what might be possible with those. And then you also get those core skills in terms of teamwork and collaboration, working both with the staff on the program, but also your colleagues in the class. So graduates currently work in a number of different areas. So we've had people that have gone on to work in film, in television, and in radio production, again, across lots of different, some previous students now have a casting agency, and they mainly work in casting. People are working in writing in film, in television, both journalism in the newsrooms, also in features production, and some people in the more kind of hands-on crewing end of things. People have gone on into digital journalism, which is a really interesting and expanding area, because a big concern with digital journalism now is around kind of the authenticity of information and what data can tell us about things, and skills and abilities to read those and read those critically are very valued. People have gone on to work in digital design and in animation. So a lot of our graduates would go kind of where you think they're going to go, which would be into sort of fairly classical media kind of jobs. But what's been really interesting over the last kind of 5 or 6 years is the extent to which companies that you never would have thought of as media companies now do a lot of their own media production. And a lot of our graduates have gone on to work, say, for corporates who would have maybe big advertising or big communications offices, and they're doing work there. And also graduates have gone on to work for charities or NGO advocacy roles. So graduates working, say, with Trocra, doing their overseas campaigns, doing their media campaigns, doing some of their media education work, or NGOs like, you know, Headline, which would be our national suicide prevention, our media agency around responsible reporting on suicide and mental ill health. Graduates work with them running their organization. So we've had people go into lots of different areas, both kind of the NGO, the charity sector, also the corporate sector, and then also kind of straightforward media sectors. So one of this year's third years has just called me to say she got a job with RTE Sport, and she's just literally just finished her degree, I think, after she got the job, technically. So, you know, it's really down to what students are interested in and where they want to go to. And I think the degree gives them a fairly good chance to explore lots of different possibilities around what they want to do in that. When you do an undergraduate degree, it's also possible when you're finished that you'll go on and do a postgraduate program that allows you to specialize more. So you might discover a love of journalism during your media studies degree. We touch on journalism at times, but we wouldn't claim to be a pure journalism course. But you might want to go on then to, say, DCU and do their MA in journalism. I think it's a good idea not to specialize too much at undergrad level and give yourself a few years to explore lots of different possibilities. And again, that's the strength of the degree at Maynooth, because you can do media with another art subject. So you might decide, actually, I've really enjoyed doing my French more than my media, so I'm going to go on now and do something in translation, or I'm going to become an interpreter. It's not that your media degree is wasted. You'll always have those communication skills, and you'll always have that critical capacity around media, but you have possibilities with other things. So some students have gone on to further study in film, in journalism, in digital production, and some then go on and do further academic work as well in our master's course in critical and creative media. So in the department, we're always happy to engage with students and talk to us. So if you want, you can check out our webpage at the Maynooth website, or that's my email there. If you have particular questions or specific things you want to ask, fire away. I'm always happy to hear from prospective students. So you can just fire an email. We are on Twitter if you want to check what we're up to there as well. So do feel free to engage with us that way. At 1 o'clock today, via the university website, there's a Q&A session. So you can ask questions. You can also ask questions now. Please feel free to share any of them in the chat. I should probably have said that at the start of the talk rather than the end, but do feel free to share in the talk now, or you can ask us anything that you want to know there. That's kind of pulls together everything I wanted to kind of say to you to begin with. And so what I might do now is stop sharing my screen, Lucas, and we may come to you just for the kind of student side of the equation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anne, for that presentation. That was really interesting. It's good, to see where it all started for myself as well. So my name is Lucas. I'm going into final year media student now. And yeah, I just want to tell you guys a little bit about what it's like to do media. Just for posterity, I also do computer science as my additional module, which I thought was super interesting because I am very much interested in the technology-based side of media. Those of you who are interested in this course, you probably know that media is everywhere all the time. We're constantly engaging with it. And this course is fantastic in letting you or allowing you to understand how that media operates. It lets you kind of critically analyze the sort of things that you see in the world every day around you in terms of podcast, radio, news, social media, very important, video games, so on and so forth. So for first year, which I did, of course, now last year, I did media theory and film production along with the graphic design and After Effects side of things, which Anne explained earlier. It serves as a really good foundation for kind of setting you up for second, third year and beyond in terms of understanding the concepts that you'll be seeing in the future and getting some real foundational knowledge on things such as what makes a graphic good? How do I use Photoshop? Why are clickbait articles so popular? And why do people prefer to engage, with things that annoy them rather than make them happy on social media, such as anger clicks and everything like that. So first year will really kind of give you a basic understanding of everything that you will need for the future, along with whatever other module you might do or course you might do. So I know a lot of people do marketing with media. They do anthropology, economics, and all of that really serves to kind of tie everything you'll learn together in a really neat kind of way. We have a question, actually. I'm going to answer straight up the first question we have there. Are the class sizes small? Oh, Anne's already got it answered there for me. Thank you, Anne.
You can speak to that, Lucas, and maybe talk a little bit about how you experienced the seminars and like what it meant to be in a small group, because I do think it's a huge transition for people when they're coming into college for the first time. And the idea of sitting in a lecture hall with a couple of hundred people can be a bit intimidating. So how would you have experienced those kind of seminars and the small group aspect of the course?
So at first it was a bit daunting. Like some classes you'll have will be larger than others. Specifically, I think the media theory ones are shared with a few other courses, and they can get big. Now, we're not going to be dealing with you're not going to be dealing with courses like business where you have 500 people in a room or 300 people in a room. The max you'll probably ever get is about 100. But you'll also always, for those modules, get the opportunity to do tutorials, which will maximum ever be 10 people. And that is a great way of kind of applying all the things that you have learned in your lectures, or if ask any questions in a kind of one-to-one basis with the lecture. So for some modules, you might have bigger than normal classes, but you asked specifically moving into second year, it will change a little bit, because in second year, you'll have the option of choosing modules that are more catered towards your interests. So for instance, for second year, I did advertising, I did society and politics, and my goodness, I'm already forgetting what I did, but those were the two big ones that I really wanted to do. Now, there's a load of other options you can do for second year. For instance, there was script writing, if you're interested in that sort of thing, radio and podcast, and honestly, so much more. And from first to second year, you're really kind of building your interests, building what you want to see out of your degree and what you want to do in the future. So in terms of the class sizes, you'll be okay. And you'll get to really, interact with members of your class. You make great friends, which is something that I really liked in media, was that there is definitely a sense of, group togetherness, because you'll be working together on film crews, you'll be working together, editing in the labs, you'll be trading ideas all the time and collaborating on projects. And there's a type of togetherness in media that you wouldn't really find in any other course I'd find, or in my opinion. But yeah, continuing on from that, second year is when things get a little more specialized than in first year. Because media is such a multidisciplinary kind of concept, you're going to really want to think about, what do you want to get out of the degree when you're choosing your modules? For instance, one thing that I really enjoyed, because I do, as I mentioned before, computer science, was the interactive web authoring module that we do in second year. So that is, I think, one of the two compulsory modules you need to do for second year. And it deals with the creation and upholding of like a personal website. So you don't need to know anything about programming. It is all taught to you from the very most basic levels, and the lectures are super helpful. And you'll learn essentially, how to build your own website. So, the framework of it first, and all the fancy colors and all the photos and everything. And by the end of it, you could have potentially a little portfolio website for yourself that you can upload if you want to. It can be about really any subject. I know I did a vaccine website for my project, because it was topical, but lots of people did things about their interests. Somebody did a website about their band, so on and so forth. One thing that I also want to add about how interesting this course is how, since media is such a broad concept, a lot of things that you might be interested in terms of media. So for instance, I'll take myself as an example of video games. I love them. And they're becoming a bigger and bigger industry every year. And we're all engaging with video games on some level, whether it be on our phones, on consoles, and everything. And I approached my lectures, especially in advertising, and I was thinking, I like the concepts that we're learning about here, but I feel like I want to put my interests into, what I'm writing. And the lectures are very open to taking on your ideas and seeing how you can develop your ideas further and research into it and see how that would fit into the concept of the course or the module itself. So I managed to do lots of essays this year about advertising in video games, the future of video games as an industry, and it was all, considered relevant material. So don't feel too kind of trapped if you're a person who is interested in media but doesn't want to do filmmaking, because also you'll get the option to kind of discuss the effects of social media on society, or how to use media to sell an idea or a product. It's all based on how you approach it, what you want to do. And if you go in with that mindset, then you will have, a really, really good time with this course. Of course, if you have any more questions about it and you want to meet more students and such, at 2 p.m., I think Anne mentioned, we are having a further Q&A. And there's also a Meet the Students webinar, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's
But
the arts degree and one about Meet the Students. So if
yes.
they are interested in the student profile, they can go to that one.
Yeah, and so that's perfect. So that's essentially it for me. The last thing I would say is don't worry too much about the finer technical details of the course, such as the editing or the programming or the using of Photoshop and After Effects, because that's what the course is there for. It's there to teach you these things from the ground up in a really effective manner, in a way that kind of challenges you and pushes you to want to learn more yourself at home. You wouldn't believe the amount of students who, first week went into the Mac labs and tried out Photoshop or After Effects for the first time, and then immediately went home and said, all right, how do I get a license? How do I get this on my own PC? We have a question. Ooh, hi, Lucas. How did you find this past year and a half during your degree course? Ah, yes, the COVID question. Well, I was very, very lucky in that I managed to pick my modules in a way that I was able to do the film production in first and second year during the times when we were effectively able to do it. Not to say that there were people who weren't able to do it. It was just a lot tougher at the time. Work from home was definitely different. I love to be in a class full of people and talking with all my peers and trading ideas. So I did miss that a little bit this year, but the college made it exceptionally accessible. All of the lectures in the media department are incredibly, they'll answer your questions quickly, succinctly, and very helpfully. So I never really felt for a moment that I was being left behind or we were kind of being left hung out to dry during the year. So if anything, that kind of reinforced my confidence in the course and the department itself. So it'll be amazing to see what happens next year when everything is reopened and we're able to go back in, see our peers again, see our lectures, and work. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably worth saying that the plan that we've heard of thus far is that we will be back on campus, that any lectures that are under 250 will be face to face. So we're so looking forward to being back in the classroom. We probably did better than some other subjects, like Lucas said, insofar as, even in semester 2, while the shutdown went on from January on until kind of the middle of March, we delayed the start of some modules. So we started the TV studio module 4 weeks late, and we did some kind of initial prep work online with students, but then we got them into the studio. So even though other students weren't allowed to come on campus, the media studies were, because it was kind of treated like a laboratory where you needed the equipment in order to be able to learn, which is the truth of it. And so the media studies students were able to get in and get on campus fairly quickly. And we just kind of managed that process, and everybody rode in together, and the lectures were, like, we taught every way imaginable. It's really fun. The students were all on my kitchen table. That's kind of how I was thinking about it. I was teaching the first year lectures, and I'd literally have 120 of them on my laptop on my kitchen table, talking to them just as we are now. And we managed to get through the module content that way for the theory stuff. But then for the practice stuff, the students came in once a week, and they were just brilliant. Like, we were so proud of them that they came in, did the work, and they just did fantastically. So we got through it. I wouldn't say it was easy, Lucas.
It had its ups and downs, yeah.
Yeah, we got there. We have another question there. Do you have to travel overseas for third year to do work experience, or can you do it in Ireland? It's not obligatory. The BA International is really, most often what it is students who are doing languages. If they're doing French or Spanish or German or Chinese, they normally take a year away and work on their language skills, but you don't have to do an international degree. You can just do the 3 years with us, straightforward, year 1, year 2, year 3, and you're finished. You only do the extra year if it's something that you really want to do, and you don't have to decide that in first year. And maybe towards the end of first year, you can figure whether you want to do it or not, but there's no obligation. So that might address that question for you.
Perfect. And honestly, that's it. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Maybe if you have a question in mind just for the next 5 minutes, because I'd definitely be able to tell you a little bit more, about the on-the-ground reality of doing the course. But if you are somebody who is interested in any form of media, whether, as I said, it be the theory, the research, the filming, podcasting, advertising. Like, I mean, I could go on and on and on with that list, because this degree really gives you that foundational knowledge for all of those things. And then as time goes on, you will specialize. You will find the things that you love. I mean, I went into this course thinking, wow, I want to be an actor. I want to be a film director. And after 2 years, I'm obsessed with media theory and the effects of social media on society, the effects of, constantly engaging and constantly being sold information and engagement to. And that's something that I hope to continue going into third year. And the course does give you that freedom. You can change your mind. You will change your mind, most likely, once you're faced with these new concepts. But one thing that's guaranteed is that you will love it if it's what you want to do, because that's what media is all about. Yeah, well, thank you anyway for listening to me. And yeah.
Great. Any other questions then, guys, before we wrap up? And like we said, there's a Q&A session. If something occurs to you later on between 1 and 2, I'll be watching the Q&A process, so I'll be able to answer questions for you then. And there's the sessions on the student experience and the session on the media arts degree at 2 o'clock. Anything else? Yeah, you're very welcome. Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're welcome.
Always fun to talk to students.
Yeah, well, the open days will be hopefully face to face soon. We'll be able to see everyone.
No, it's kind of hard to imagine. If you want to mix media with medieval Celtic studies, would that be an unusual combo? To be honest, there's no disadvantage, Kay. Like, that's a really interesting way of coming at it. And when you look at all the UK productions, it's funny you make that combination. I was just watching a really interesting program the other evening about medieval kind of Arthurian legend, which was on, I think it was Channel 4 or BBC. So when it comes to media content, it's kind of that point that Lucas was making, that everything's up for grabs. Like, any interest you have will end up in the media content that you're interested in. So if you're really into horses, or you're really into medieval Celtic studies, or whatever you are interested in and passionate about is great content. So it's a good combination. Just check out in the arts session later on, there's certain subjects you can and can't combine with. So just make sure it's a possible combination. Maynooth groups subjects into different groups for timetabling purposes, basically. So just make sure that you can combine them. Can we maybe talk about the language course in media studies? That's really down to the combination of subjects that you choose, Maggie. So if you want to study French or Spanish or Chinese or German or Irish, those would be some of the main language subjects. It just becomes a matter of doing media studies with that subject. So we won't necessarily be very aware of what other subjects you're doing. We'll just be teaching you the media bit, but the other departments then will be teaching you the language part. So you'll have a whole degree in the other language, as well as a degree in media. And you can do them as double honors, or you can do what's called a major minor. You might want to do a little bit more media studies than language, or a bit more language studies than media. So you can kind of slightly skew which way you want to do your degree, but you end up with them both as your degree subjects. Is it mandatory to do work experience throughout the 4 years? No, not at all. Like, a lot of our students coming to Maynooth will already have part-time jobs because they need money. We recognize that. That's simply kind of a fact of life at this stage of the game. The program is quite intense. The university semesters are 12 to 13 weeks long. Within that, we cover a lot of ground. We do a lot of assignments. You're learning an awful lot. It's a steep learning curve. Then in kind of January time, you have exams, and then you're straight back into the second semester. So there's a lot to do already during the college year. Now, what's great is if you can get some work experience. So you might want to volunteer at a community radio station, or go work in your local radio station, or some students may have contacts and get to go onto a film set, or go into RTE, or go to one of the broadcasters. Like, that's great, just because it gives you exposure, and you get to, something that you think you might love, you might actually not love. You might decide, you'd love to be a radio presenter, but then you find out actually it makes you really nervous and you're practically sick when you're trying to do it. And so it's not the career for you. There's all those discoveries that you get through work experience. And it is good, like media employers in particular, they want you to have a degree. because I've done a lot of interviews with employers asking them what do they want and what do they expect from students, and they're like, yeah, look, we like that they have a degree, but it'd be great if they have some experience too. So again, it depends on what area of media you want to get into. So experience is good, but we're cognizant that it might be something you do over the summer months. If you were to take it on top of your program, it might be a little bit much, but then that depends on the experience as well. You know, if it's a few hours a week, grand, but anything more committed than that might be a bit tricky. So that's maybe a little bit of an ambivalent answer. It's great to have it, but just make sure it doesn't put your studies in danger. Essentially, it's not mandatory. We don't expect you to be doing it. So you won't be penalized for not doing it, put it that way. Will special guests be present during seminars and lectures, as in guest speakers? Well, I suppose one of the upsides of COVID was that it was easier to get people to do guest talks because they could literally Zoom into the class, or you set up a Teams invite, they come on, they could speak virtually to students. And actually I ended up doing sort of a lot of interviews with them that we then used during class as recorded videos. So we do try to get guest speakers in, and sometimes that can be done a bit in collaboration with students. If there's someone they're particularly interested to hear from or talk to, that's kind of something that we focus on a good bit, particularly in third year, getting guest speakers in to come and talk to them. But yeah, lots of different modules will get different people in at different times. And then there's kind of a whole life in the university outside of media studies as well. So there'll always be kind of talks on and interesting things going on, and a whole life in terms of clubs and societies that allow you to follow your interests and engage with that. Anything? I hope that answers.
We have a question from Kay as well, asking about how many lectures a week there would be if you're doing media as a minor. So I think minors for 20 credits. So that's 4 modules.
So yeah, I mean, typically what your first year timetable would look like for media studies is you would have 2 1-hour lectures. So in semester 1 will start September until Christmas, and you'll have 2 1-hour lectures during the week and 1 1-hour seminar for the theory courses. Then if you're doing the TV documentary module, you'll have 2 2-hour classes. So you have a 2-hour class about documentary production and a 2-hour class about cameras, lights and sound and editing, where you learn the hands-on stuff. So that would be 3 and 4, 7 hours in semester 1. And then in semester 2, it's a similar pattern. You'd have 2 1-hour lectures for your theory module and a 1-hour seminar. And then you would have maybe 2 hours in the lab, in the Mac lab, for MD 171 for the graphic design and green design module. So kind of 6 to 7 hours a week in terms of contact hours for media. And then you'll have your other subject as well. So depending on what that is, Kay, that could vary. So that's the timetable question. Will there be work experience necessary? I think we've addressed that one. And yeah, you'll be juggling 2 subjects anyway, usually, because you have to get the same number of credits to get a degree. So the subjects you do just becomes about how do the credits break down. Are you doing 50-50, which is double honors, or if you're going to do a major, you do slightly more. So, but that's something that you'll figure out kind of as you go as well, through the degree.
And I might add as well, actually, just in terms of the work experience being necessary, just for Kay and the other question, while there's no like work experience provided within the course itself, you will gain really valuable technical experience in a bunch of different things, such as editing, camera work, how to function as in a crew for a film production crew. Like you could end up taking the role of a producer, presenter, editor, sound engineer, camera op, sound op. So while you're not leaving the college per se to go work in a company over the course of the degree, you will essentially get that technical experience as if you were for certain kind of different things. So if you're worried, that you will get the degree and you won't have any experience on how to work behind a camera or anything like that at the end of it, you will definitely get that experience. So don't worry too much about that.
Yeah, the people who teach into the degree on that side are kind of industry people. So they've worked in film for a long period of time or currently work with Virgin Media. So they're very kind of current in terms of, and then I worked in media industries for a while as well. So there is that sense of kind of an industry facing, and I do a lot of research with industries as I'm talking to them all the time. about what they want and how they want things done. Just another question on, did the amount of modules per year decline throughout the 3-year degree program? So the number of credits that you do in your degree is kind of split evenly across the 3 years. So you're kind of doing the same amount of contact each time. I suppose what shifts and changes is that you get to focus more on what you want to do. So if you love film and you're not that pushed about the online stuff, you can leave that in 3rd year and you can just focus on film. And there'll be like 2 other electives you might choose then to study. So you'll study the short film for your practice. You might study global cinema for your elective. You might study script writing, and you might, there's another film module, which of course I can't remember now that I've stopped to think about it. Which, so that would be kind of an example of how, if you have a particular interest in an area, you might follow that. Or if you're more interested in the politics society, you might decide, well, I'm going to do the short film, I'm going to make a documentary, and it's going to be about a political issue, and I'm going to study the media publics modules and the more sociological modules. So you're doing the same amount of work, but it's just, I suppose, when we all get to pursue what we really love and what we're really interested in, it doesn't feel like quite so much work. So I hope that answers that question for you. Have we anything else?
Oh. Yeah, one more. The scariest question you can ask a media student. What would be some employer examples?
Okay, so we have students who've worked, say, for Storyful, which is kind of the digital news agency. Like I said, Anya is just starting with RTE Sport. We'd have students who've gone into RTE, into Radio 1, students who are working with Virgin Media in their production gallery, in their camera rooms. Then the NGO type, some students working in advertisement with Rothko, that big kind of advertisement company, with Accenture, students who are working in the communications office of a union, Forza. So they've kind of ended up in all sorts of different places. There aren't great mechanisms for tracking where they go. So we are doing that research at the minute to see, you know, where have students gone on since the degree, and what do they find useful from the degree, and what do they not find useful. And we use that knowledge all the time to kind of rethink and redesign the degree program. But that will give you some examples. So some have gone into a more kind of corporate style of employer where they're working in communications, and some would have gone into more traditional media industries, Anna. So I hope that helps.
I think there's one in TikTok as well, actually, doing content moderation in TikTok. Yes. So yeah, it just goes to show it's a difficult question sometimes to answer because of just how broad it is at the start. But by the end of the degree, you will have a pretty surefire idea of where you want to go and what you want to do. It'll just be kind of different for each person depending on what they've specialized in. That would be my help on that answer there.
Yeah.
Also TikTok, you know, who doesn't want to work for TikTok? But I think that's it in terms of questions for now.
Okay, folks. We're just coming up to the end of the time as well, so we might just wrap up there if that's okay. Lucas, thanks a million for your input.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And thanks for all the questions, guys.
Yeah, and hope you enjoyed the sessions at 1 o'clock on the, or 2 o'clock on the art screen on the student experience. And again, if you have other questions that occur to you later, we're available on the Q&A. Okay, thanks, Mel.